Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald, with me co-host Sheldon Kaufman. Today, we are giving a bi-weekly NBA recap. Of course, it's been more than 2 weeks since our last recap, but some really fun things have been happening in the NBA, and we got some teams to talk about because it's been 3-4 weeks since we've last talked about teams. To get it started off really quickly, Sheldon, trivia question: what do you have prepared for me today?
All right, Pat. Hopefully, I can stump you on this one. So who holds the record for most steals in NBA history? Total steals. All right. It's a multiple choice one. John Stockton, Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, Michael Jordan, or Gary Payton?
I don't think you quite got me with this one. At first, I was a little confused. I was like, is this in a single game, a single season, in a career? But I know that in his career, John Stockton had the career steals record.
All right. Well, that can't get anything past you, Pat.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
right.
don't,
John
I,
Stockton, number one.
I feel like that's like B tier NBA iceberg knowledge, probably. Like, good people, most people probably know that one. I don't know. I think, go ahead.
Nah, I'm just
Okay.
listening.
I think, I saw a post today. It was about, John Stockton compared to Magic Johnson, and it was basically just showing the acclimation of stats, accumulation of stats that John Stockton has had, and they compared it to the likes of LeBron relative to Jordan. And I just thought it was a funny post. Uh, Felt to mention that one at the 2 minute mark of this podcast. Anyway, NBA recently we last week we recapped the trade deadline. That was very fun. Since then, one of the trades has been revoked. Mark Williams is no longer a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. Dalton Connect, the first round picks in the very far future, are going back to the Lakers. Mark Williams is going back to the Hornets. Apparently, there was medical information withheld from the Lakers before the trade was completed. Weird. This is almost unprecedented. I don't really know that of another time that this has happened. There was the Chris Paul veto, but that was essentially the owner of the Hornets vetoing the Chris Paul trade, which
The
you know,
Hornets were NBA controlled, right? Though back then, so a little completely different situation, I think, but very similar, but also like a little bit different in its own aspect.
yeah, I mean, it's just completely different, and it's a really weird situation. I wonder how. I mean, there's no way Mark Williams signs an extension this offseason now with Charlotte. Like it's probably a really ugly situation over there right now.
Yeah, I also saw Pat that the Hornets are like protesting the recension. So that's interesting. I don't really know how that's gonna work out, but I don't think it's gonna work out. But it's very interesting to note that they're trying to get him off the team. So yeah, I think that an extension. I think they're fed up with the injuries. Obviously, there were some concerns that were being withheld, and I mean, it goes to show that Mark Williams has been playing with has to be serious injuries if he couldn't pass the physical for the Lakers. And really interesting situation, especially with Dalton Connect, the guy that we're going to see, unlike Mark Williams, who will probably play very soon for the Lakers. He should be in the rotation by the next game. Very weird. Especially now you keep Dalton Connect. What do you feel like the relationship is there? Because he doesn't look that happy, Pat. Especially compared to the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Dalton too. He's already played back right as we're recording this. The Lakers are playing tonight, and Dalton Connect has hit a three in a game that he's playing with the Los Angeles Lakers. I think with him, it's not as bad as with Mark Williams because I mean he was getting traded for like a legit NBA player, and like that's something that no rookie wants to have happen. But when it happens to rookies, they kind of understand it as it's a part of the game. I think for Mark Williams' sake, more it's a lot uglier because it the way in which the Hornets have handled trading him, it kind of felt like they just really wanted him gone. He's a younger guy who, does fit the timeline of what they're building, and since the trade has been rescinded, the Hornets are really pushing to still get it done. And it just sounds to me like they knew that there was something going on with him and that they just wanted to cash out before anything goes really badly with him.
Yeah, another interesting thing, Pat. I feel like we had the Hornets pretty high on the trade deadline, and I think that the move that they made was one of the reasons, getting Dalton Connect and a couple first round picks for the Lakers, along with a lot of things they did. Now this kind of like not crazy because they still did have a good trade deadline, but it does take a little bit of hit to that deadline that was so successful. It's just interesting, man. A lot can happen overnight in the NBA, as we've seen multiple times throughout this trade deadline.
Yeah, it's such a crazy thing that just like and this thing type of thing never happens, and it did, and I don't know, it really hurts the Lakers' chances of winning this year. I'll say that. I don't think just because of how well they've played to this point in the season, I think they'll probably be okay. But if this was a couple years ago, this probably throws them out of a playoff or even potentially a play-in hunt. So I think they're lucky that hey they can still go in the back of Luka Doncic and LeBron James to just they'll win enough games to make the playoffs this year is what I would assume. Um, Also mentioned, worth mentioning, All Star All Star game is this weekend. There are players who are hurt for the All Star game, which means there are players who are replacing the injured players in our in All Star spots. Anthony Davis is hurt. His replacement is his new teammate Kyrie Irving, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is hurt, and his replacement is Trae Young. How do we feel about these replacements?
Yeah, I'm okay with both. I think Trey Young was a guy that was kind of left off, and it was a little surprising considering the year he's had, averaging over 20 points, I think in the low 20s, and one of the best assists per game leaders this year. So I'm glad he got that nod. Kyrie Irving, I'm okay with it as well. We maybe could have given it to a couple other guys, but I mean, Kyrie Irving's been it's been underrated what he's been doing for the Mavericks considering Luka's been out for so long. Um, so I really don't have I don't really have too much of a problem with these two guys. What about you, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I would have rather Demonis Sabonis probably, but I mean, I think that's just a personal thing. I think he doesn't quite get enough credit for what he does, but yeah, I mean, I don't really hate it. Like Kyrie Irving's playing really well, Trae Young's playing really well. I think a lot of with what Trae Young has done in the past is kind of narrative wise carried over into these most recent couple years where I think he's kind of matured a little bit with his game. I don't think he's quite the gunslinger who, never saw a shot he did. Well, he still never sees a shot he doesn't like, but he has a little bit more
He'll chuck a
discipline.
couple of them.
Yeah. He has a lot more discipline and it doesn't feel like he does all the shenanigans that he did as a younger player that he makes would get other people in trouble for things that he did, specifically the Nate McMillan situation. But yeah, I think he's matured a lot, and I mean, I watched him play the other night against the Knicks, and what was a crazy game,
Great game.
almost 300 points scored in overtime. Trey Young had um, a really poor first half and then like he was awesome from fourth quarter on. Like he was awesome. So yeah, that's Trey Young. And then I mean we talked about it last time, but in the Spurs game, like Trey Young was really good down the stretch of that game. And Trey Young is playing at a really high level right now. So
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird that the Hawks like didn't make any moves. I know we talked about it already, but just like that game was just so good. I mean, Dyson Daniels, near down the stretch of that overtime, picked a couple pockets to keep the Hawks in it when it looks like the Knicks are about to run away with the lead in overtime. It was a great game, man. And Niang just couldn't hit the open shot, uh, which was crazy. But yeah,
that I would call like one of the uh best games that we've seen all year. Like that was a great game. You know, That's. Do you have any other great games too? I guess while we're at it, that you've seen recently.
I don't have not really in front of me. I do have a couple performances and a couple guys that have been playing good on the new teams. I don't have any like certain games though.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
Uh,
do you?
I guess let's quickly get off the couple of things that we do want to talk about. I want to talk about one team specifically, and I think it's because I don't we've had never really had a moment in the past to talk about this team because they've been horrible. And they haven't been horrible as of late. And I want to jog your memory. I think one random Tuesday night I texted you. You remember the Chris Paul and Steve Nash meme from Charles Barkley where he said, "I got two words for you, Chris Paul and Steve Nash." I sent you my version of that text message. Do you remember which two players I sent it as?
I remember the message, but I don't remember the players. But I remember you sending the meme message to me. Yeah.
The two players, uh, Donovan Clingan and Mark Williams, must see TV. Now, clearly this was a little bit uh, before the trade deadline, but at this point in time, this was right before the Blazers have gone on like what is for them like an unreal run. I believe it could have changed within the past couple of days, but they were 9-1 in their last 10, and it was like, okay, now they're 6-4 in their last 10. They've lost three in a row, so maybe.
Two to the Nuggets and one to the Timberwolves, so not the worst losses.
Yeah, and then I think before that they were like really balling out in the turn of the new year, and with them a lot of it is just I mean, I hate DeAndre Ayton, but he's been playing a lot better on the offensive side of the floor, and Donovan Cling just brings them this unreal rim protection. And then some of their guys who like are good players, but you don't expect that much out of them, like Jeremy Grant and Denny Avdia and Anthony Simons. They've just all been playing really well too.
Yeah, Shaden
Uh,
Sharp. I think Shaden Sharp needs to be included in that list too, because
100%.
he is a very good second, third option for them. I think they really like using Denny and Amphrey mainly to kind of initiate the offense, but Shaden Sharp is really good, man. A sharpshooter, and he's or not sharp. He can hit the three ball pretty well, and he's very good once he gets when he starts to get downhill, going to that bucket.
Yeah. Of course they're 8-8 in January when I say that they've been playing extremely well as of late. But if we go back to mid-January, from January 21st on, they won. I believe that is one, two, three, four, five, six in a row from January 28th to February 8th. And then it was another 10, or it was four more with one loss to the OKC Thunder in between from January 19th onward. So they went on a 10-1 streak with their only loss being to the Thunder, and then they lose to the Nuggets twice and the Timberwolves, like you said before. They've been playing really well. They've been playing good. I mean, the Indiana Pacers have been also very good, and I'm sure we'll talk about them a little bit more. But the Pacers, the Bucks, the Magic, the Suns twice. The Magic again, Miami, yeah, they're in a downspin, but Miami and then Chicago can sneak wins against guys. Like they've been playing pretty well. I just want to shout out Portland because this might be the only chance we really have to really throughout the year, and neither of us had high expectations for them, but I think right now we're seeing the best out of all the players on their roster that we do like. And Scoot Henderson's been playing better, which is good for him because it was not looking good at all.
Yeah,
So
he's been having a kind of career resurgence this not second half, but ever since the turn of the calendar year, I feel like he's been putting up some good performances. He's doing everything that we thought he would do a couple years ago. It's good to see him starting to like kind of find his way because he was kind of playing his way out of this league at the start of his career.
yeah, like really unfortunately too. Um, do we I guess we have to address the All-Star Game stuff because we did a live reaction video. It wasn't really a live reaction video because I was not able to get to the recording right at 6:30, and half of the draft had been done before. It was not really a draft. It was a sorting of teams to where it was old players, young players, and international players. And I mean,
They
I guess
fooled
how
us,
do we feel
man.
about this?
They fooled us.
I know. Just when I
I don't
was,
know. I mean, it's a cool concept, but I mean, I'd rather just them pick, to be honest. I mean, I mean, like it's kind of a marketing way, I guess. That's how I see it. They want to push the international and the young players kind of and be like, "Oh, look at all them hooping against all the old heads and stuff." So, I mean, it's cool, but I would have been fine with, them picking their own guys, you know. Also, did you see Shaq rejected Charles Barkley's trade, Trey Young for Kyrie Irving, because apparently Kyrie Irving was born in Australia. Um, so yeah, that happened. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's gonna be interesting. But yeah, like I said, I would have been fine watching a real draft, but I'm indifferent.
yeah, I would have been I feel like I would have rathered a real draft, but if we were going to get it, I would have rather them just straight up told us they were doing it that way because kind of
No,
ruined the
yeah,
hype
I
for
don't.
it.
Yeah, like what?
Like if Charles Barkley's going to get the four best players in the league right now, like it's kind of ridiculous. Like what are we doing? Um, yeah, I mean, what else do we have team wise or player wise?
Yeah, I'll talk about a team real quick. The Nuggets have been doing really well lately. They're on an 8 game win streak and they're 8-2. The defense has been getting better. They're up to like 16th defensively. What's that rated? Defensive rate. Yeah, their defensive rating they're 16th. Which isn't like the top 10 and 10 that you like, but it is a huge step up from where they used to be. I think it was like in the 20s about a month or two ago. So they've been playing really well. And a lot of guys have been hurt, man. Jokic has just been doing his thing. And Jamal Murray as well. He's been playing really well recently. The guy who's been getting a lot of criticism. He's been putting up some good numbers. Namely 55 points last night against Portland, and the Nuggets are only a half a game out of the second seed in the West right now. Patrick, I think a surprise. I think it was a surprise, not from a beginning of the season standard, but from kind of how the thing started off. They were looking like a middle of the pack team, but they've been stepping it up recently. Um, so I just wanted to highlight them real quick.
Yeah, I want to point out as soon as Aaron Gordon comes back, like their defense gets a little bit better. It's kind of surprising how that works. Um, I really like. I mean, I never really lost faith with the Nuggets. I don't think you did either. Jokic has been across atop your MVP ladder every time except I think the last time that you did it. I think you bumped Shea up.
I think I still kept Jokic. I
So,
but
yeah,
it's so tough, but it's tough, man. It's really tough, but like I said, Jokic has this team as like a third seed. And he doesn't have Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hardenstein. Uh, who are their other good guys?
everyone
Shea
else.
Gilgris or shit. That's who we're talking about. But yeah, he definitely doesn't have the star power that OKC has, and he still has his team top three in the same division, and this is the toughest division in the NBA, obviously the West. So I mean, it's really impressive. And yeah, very impressive stuff.
Yeah. For context, Christian Braun, I feel like he would make the rotation in OKC, but like he's nothing special in OKC. Like if Christian Braun has an off shooting night, he comes out of the Thunder rotation. If he has an off shooting night, the Nuggets lose, and it's just a really bad day for the Nuggets. So like there's levels to it. Um, Currently, uh, I'm hoping you don't have their basketball reference up because this question will be completely pointless. But their schedule adjusted net rating, SRS. What do you think it is? So
So,
basically,
Pat, I like how you think that I even know.
no, like relative to the league, like 1 through 30th.
Okay, okay. And what is it? Their strength of schedule?
Their their net rating, but they adjust for how good of teams you play, pretty
Okay, and
much.
this is the Nuggets.
Yes.
I'll go 10th. 10th or 12th.
No, much higher.
Fifth, fourth,
Fifth.
fifth. Wow.
They're top five. Behind
Okay.
Cleveland, OKC, Boston, and either Memphis or New York, I believe. I'll get a quick confirmation. Behind Cleveland, OKC, Boston, and New York. Denver comes in fifth. So they've been playing extremely well, like you said. Half game out of second. I think it's very possible for them to get that spot and win home court advantage in most of the first round or first two rounds. Well, all of the first two rounds if they get the second seed. So Denver's playing really well. Um, I want to shout out. Who do I want to shout out?
I mean, most of the teams that have been balling, Pat, I think are kind of
We
the
talk
top teams in
about.
the East.
Yeah,
The
they're,
Heat.
they're the.
I mean, the Celtics, Cavs, and Knicks are all 8-2 in their last 10. Just crazy. Um, and then Grizzlies are 7-3 in their last 10. Thunder 8-2. So the top teams are not moving at all. Um, and I think as we're kind of at that point in the season where we know what teams are, and these these top teams are definitely cementing themselves as like the playoff front runners and kind of championship contenders, like we've talked about.
Yeah, and we've kind of known who these top tier teams are for a while, but now it's looking like very strongly like it's Denver and OKC in the West, and it's those three East teams. And I think there's a potential for Indiana to kind of sneak themselves into that conversation. And then like I wouldn't doubt on Memphis and Houston either. Like I think everybody kind of knows these teams, and as teams who aren't in this conversation start to kind of fall out of really any other hope of potentially snagging like a 4 seed, I think these top teams will continue to pile on wins throughout the season, and we're going to get some high win totals. I believe. I think the Knicks are the third seed in the East. They're on pace for like 55 wins, so it's going to be a big season for a lot of these teams. Um, do we have any huge player performances that we do want to talk about?
Yeah, I can talk about some they've gone in the past week. First of all, KD got 30K, 30K points over the
Yes.
weekend. So hats off to him. Crazy stuff. And they still lost. I think the Suns are what they've been for the past couple years. Just not they're not going to make it because of injuries. It's really sad to see. Um, but over this past week, there's been some good performances. Jamal Murray had 55 points against Portland, like I said. DeRozan 3 days ago had 42 and 7 against the Mavericks. Um, LeBron James turned back the clock uh, like a week ago against the Golden State Warriors. He dropped 42, 17. 42 and 17 with 6 3-pointers made, which is crazy. Booker had 47 against the Jazz. Jokic had 40 and 8 against Portland. Wemby had 31 and 5 or 31 and 15 rebounds against the Wizards. Cat had 40 and 12 against the Pacers. Spicy P had 33 and 11. And Dame had 43 and 8 assists against the 76ers 4 days ago. Um, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, that's a lot of 40s and 30s the past week. Uh, I think last night, Jordan Poole had 42 as well. Um, I mean, high scoring lead. I feel like the 40s is crazy this year. How many players are scoring 30 points and 40 points? Wild stuff. Yeah, and a couple other players, small player things I have. Markel Fultz signed with the Kings. Really good. I mean, this is a guy that we talked about should be getting signed in the preseason prediction videos, and I'm glad it finally happened. and Alex Lynn ends up with the Lakers. So center problem solved. Not really, but I think it's I don't know. I mean, it's better than Jackson Hayes, maybe.
It's
Um,
about as good as they could have done.
yeah, and I still think there's guys out there that you maybe. I mean, shit. I think it's interesting that Dwight Howard hasn't gotten a call. Just saying.
Yeah, I think
Um,
there's other reasons.
yeah, obviously, but there's a couple of guys. I saw JaVale McGee was an option. I don't know. I don't really know about that. I mean, decent lob threat, but yeah. Oh, Brandon Ingram signed a 3-year, $120 million extension, and he seems to be loving Toronto. And I'm kind of actually like excited a little bit about what they have building there. I don't know. We'll see. Like we've talked about the concerns, obviously. Then there's very serious ones, right? But I think it would be interesting. Uh, that's about. I mean, I have a couple like guys in the guys on new team stuff. Um,
Okay. Um, I do have one conversation note that I did want to bring up. Yeah, I hate doing it because it is a more negative one. Um, I was watching the Spurs and the Magic the other day, and I think he ended up having a really nice game that day. But I couldn't help but notice like Paolo Banchero does not look like himself out there, even compared to prior seasons. He's still averaging 22 points per game, which is right in line with a year ago. But like you look at you look further down the line, and his true shooting percentage is like 51%, which is like ridiculous. Like that's crazy. Like that's Jordan Clarkson on an off night type of bad. And then assist rates are better than they've been in previous years, but he's still not like jumping off the page in any other area besides his scoring volume, and his efficiency is just so cooked right now. And I'm wondering like how concerned are we for Paolo Banchero?
yeah. I think the concerns are definitely real, just because the jumper does not look there at all. And a lot of his game is kind of that inside mid. Like I see him taking mid range pull ups. They're not really falling. I see Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero being left a little bit. They're giving space for them guys to shoot because they simply can't make open shots. Franz Wagner has been getting better at it this year, but he still is not at the level. Oh yeah, he still is not at the level kind of like where he's a consistent open knockdown shooter. Like if he gets open shots, there's a high chance he misses them. And this Magic team. I think I'm a little bit more down on than I was at the beginning of the season. I still think they'll make the playoffs, but I just don't really see them being much of a threat in the playoffs. Really, I think Boncaro needed to make a big step, and I don't think too much. Like a lot of it. I mean, he did have a huge injury. Both these guys had huge injuries. Jalen Suggs, I don't even think has been playing too much for them, and he's like a huge part of their offense. And Caldwell Pope this year just hasn't really been what they needed him to. I think this is a guy that me and you kind of both thought would come in and really help them, and he just has not panned out to be good. I mean, shit, they probably should have sticked with Joe Ingles. um, but uh, yeah,
They should have.
yeah, that's
Um,
that's kind of how I feel about it. A lot of jumpers are being missed from Paolo. That's really what you chalk it up to. If he could just make these jumpers, man, those numbers would look a hell of a lot better, and they would be winning more games.
yeah, and Paolo, for example, too, a lot of it is, he did have a really poor injury, right? Like he had the same injury as Franz
100%.
Wagner.
100%.
Yeah, I mean he had the same injury, but he was out for what felt like 2 months, and Franz I only felt like was out for like 3 to 4 weeks. So Paolo clearly had a much worse version of the injury. And you just look like across the board, right? His free throw percentages, right? He's still shooting the same amount per game. He was around a 73% shooter the past couple years. This year he's a 65% shooter. Like he just his shot doesn't seem to be quite right. And as much as I do want to, throw this on, hey, his shot selection just hasn't been as good as it's been since he's been working back from this injury. Like, if you watch Klay Thompson in 2022 when he was just learning how to play basketball again, he was just taking a bunch of shots to try to feel things out. That's what it feels like with Paolo. But then I also look at the free throw percentages and I'm like, clearly there's, a step down as a player here. Um, on the clearly his shooting ability is a little bit worse than it had been previously, and I don't know. I hate to break it up, but this was something that I kind of felt when he went down. I was like, hey, like they're probably still gonna be fine, and if I guess just take a guess, Paolo when Paolo Banchero is on the floor versus off the floor. What do you think the difference is with his on off?
When he's off the floor, I'm gonna go +5.
Okay. It was plus so when he is off the court, they are neutral against teams. So they're trading baskets against teams. When Paolo is on the floor, they're getting
Oh,
outscored by 7.5 points per 100 possessions. So it's just been rough. I think a lot of that's Paolo shooting in general, but it's been rough. This is a good Magic team, and I think it sucks for him because a lot of what was making this team good was like the mob of it all, right? You have Paolo and Franz dominating the ball a lot and facilitating and making plays for teammates, but then you also have, hey, Jonathan Isaac's coming off the bench and giving a ton of energy, and Mo Wagner is coming off the bench and just being a sicko, and he tore his ACL, and then Jalen Suggs has been out pretty much since Paolo's been back, right? And I think Jalen Suggs is a big piece of what's going on in Orlando. So I think some of the numbers are skewing less in favor of Paolo, but uh, it just does look rough out there. So I just did want to paint the picture.
yeah, Pat. This team also is the 29th team offensive rating wise. So offense is not their strong suit at all. Um, I mean, and they're missing Jalen Suggs. I mean, Jonathan Isaac, probably one of my favorite guys to go. Oh yeah, that's off. Like right before he even shoots it, he's really not a knockdown shooter. He shoots a lot of threes for them. Uh, they just don't have guys that can really knock down. I mean, Jalen Suggs is only shooting 31% from the 3 point line this year, and he's probably one of their better shooters from the three. I mean, besides Mo Wagner, he's their best 3 point shooter, pretty much. I mean, Gary Harris and uh, De Silva are like .2 higher than him, but I mean, none of their guys are shooting over 35% from the 3 point line. Uh, and this is a game where you kind of have to have good shooters, especially in today's day and age. I mean, they're second. They're second in defensive rating, Pat. One of the best defensive teams, but they still aren't winning games because they just simply can't score. And like you said, when your offense and Paolo Banchero is playing like having the struggles that he's having, it's going to happen. It's coupled with the injuries and everything. I mean, really tough luck for the Magic this year. I think they've been injured all the time.
And like with me, I hear the lack of 3 point shooting and the poor offense, and I I look to last year's Pistons team, right? And you look at how it affected Kate Cunningham. Like the last year's Pistons team was 27th rather than 29th, but they were also the worst 3 point shooting team a year ago, just like I believe Orlando is right now. It wasn't ever this bad for Cade, so I'm just generally very concerned about Paolo because I think even if you take previous year's Paolo and you put him on this team, like how much better are they necessarily? Like I'm just generally kind of concerned because if you take previous year's Palo, obviously he's still going to get his numbers, but he's dishing it out to nobody. So I'm just really lost on whether this is a team oriented thing where they can't score offensively, or Palo's a part of why they aren't scoring offensively. So I'm really hoping they figure it out.
Yeah, I mean the Magic are in kind of deep shit if it happens to be the latter, where the problem is Paolo, because I mean this is a team that's not probably not going to get a lottery pick, right? They're good enough in the East where they're going to be a top play-in team. Um, I think they're like seventh or eighth right now. So, I mean, even if you do get the lottery, you're going to be a top hit. Not that, I mean, you're going to be at this mediocre level kind of. I think for the rest of the way, kind of stuck where you're picking 14, 13, 12, 11, 10 in that area, and you don't really do much. And that's if Paolo doesn't turn out to be this kind of this all-star caliber player, because I think Franz is the same way. He's all-star caliber. Um so I mean, I think they're in trouble with Powell if the problem is Powell. But like you said, man, crazy injury. He's been out for 2 months. He's getting back into things. Well, let's wait just a little bit. I think the concerns are
Yeah.
definitely real, but let's see how this season ends up. And if he continues this, then we kind of have to have those talks. I think.
Mhm.
But they do have the luxury where they have Franz Wagner as basically the same player, who's playing a little bit better this year. So I mean, uh, yeah, I would say let's pump the brakes, but there are a bunch of red flags right now going on in Orlando.
Yeah. Hate to be negative, but it was just something that really jumped out at me, and I was like, hey, how come when Anthony Black and Tristan Da Silva come in, they just have this kind of umph to them, and it consistently would happen as you go in and watch Orlando games. And I think a lot of it's the injury. I think he had like a really bad oblique strain because it felt like him and Franz came back 2 to 3 games apart from each other, and Franz, like they had a whole 12-2 stretch with Franz playing when Paolo was out. So it was like it shouldn't have lined up that way. Um, yeah, that's my Orlando, you know, hesitancy, but I we'll talk about it in the off season. I'm sure if something doesn't change, but I could see it changing easily. Um, yeah, let's get to some players.
Yeah, so I'm sure you're gonna know the first name I'm about to mention. Karis LeVert has been a nice little addition for the Hawks
Mhm.
recently. They kind of went to him a lot during that game, if I'm not mistaken, against the Knicks, especially down the stretch. Uh, in 3 games, he's averaging 15 points and 7 boards for them, and I think he's going to be a key part for their offense, kind of moving forward. As is, I mean, shit, he is the second option besides Oneku Okongwu without Jalen Johnson. I mean, uh, yeah, I mean, close
He-
third option maybe, but I mean, we didn't really want them to trade DeAndre Hunter, but Karis LeVert hasn't been doing too bad for them recently.
I would agree. Uh, the Karis LeVert magic is that he's pretty good at everything, right? Like he can handle the ball for you. He can pass it a little bit. He can play a little bit of defense. He's very flexible. You can throw him into a ton of different lineups, and I don't think that flexibility is necessarily highlighted as good on a lot of teams or on Cleveland as it would be highlighted in a lot of teams. And I think Atlanta could just really kind of needed that versus with Hunter, like he's kind of a guy who you just kind of throw out there next to other guys and say, go do something. I think Karis LeVert has a little bit more of an ability to create for teammates compared to Hunter, and you know I do think that it's a pretty solid trade for Atlanta. Now, given it a little bit of time, because at the time it was a lot easier to say that. God dang, they're just out here tanking for San Antonio. Like, what are we doing? But I do think that it could actually be a move that helps them in the current moment now that Jalen Johnson's gone. And Karis LeVert's a good player, and he's gonna get signed somewhere this offseason on a mid level, and they're gonna get a steal. So that's Karis LeVert.
Yeah, I wrote down Zach Levine has been consistent. Not kind of his shooting numbers have dipped recently from the 3 point line, but he's still averaging 20 points and he's keeping the Kings afloat. I'm worried about the Kings, Pat. They're losing some games that they shouldn't. They just lost to the Pelicans in OT. Pelicans team that recently just lost 10 straight. Uh, so I don't really know what's going on there. Um, Valachunas, he's averaging 11 and 8. Honestly, not doing that bad for them. But I think the Kings are kind of in a rough spot right now. Uh, this season. This season, I don't really see them. I mean, I guess they might make a play-in game. They're ninth right now, in the West, but I'm a little worried about them. So I wrote that Zach LaVine is keeping this team afloat, or Zach has been consistent, and the Kings are staying afloat. Um, oh yeah, Fox has been playing pretty well for the Spurs. He's averaging like 20 and 8 in 4 or 5 games, but they've just been getting unlucky, man. 3 and 7 in their last 10. Uh, One of those was against the Celtics. They lost to the Magic by 1 on a really rough draw. Hornets got a buzzer beater on them by Miles Bridges. They lost to the Grizzlies. They lost to the Heat by 2. A lot of close losses. So really unfortunate for the Spurs, who uh, they're still in it. They're still in it. Let's just. But Fox has been playing well recently for them. And Quentin Grimes, I don't know what the this is. I might go ahead and segue into something else here, but I don't really know what the Mavs are doing with that trade.
I don't either.
Made completely no sense, and me and you had talked about it. But Quentin Grimes just had 30 points in his last game, or yeah, not tonight, but the game before. Uh, oh shoot, he's on the 76ers now. I
He made it
forgot.
for Paul George having 2.
Yeah, Paul George, man. We're not going to talk about them, but because we're not allowed to. But Quentin Grimes has been playing really good. Yeah, 30. And then he played. Yeah, 30 and 13. But when he started, he got 30 points and was just really looking good. 4 for 9 from the 3 point line as well. So I mean that's going to be interesting. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to start, I think, especially with the injuries going on there. So keep an eye on the Quentin Grimes situation. That's kind of going to segue. You're going to be able to talk about this, Pat. So AD out indefinitely, or out at least until the playoffs. Weird stuff. I mean, he didn't even get hit. Kind of like I guess he tweaked something trying to move over, and he had 24 points before he got hurt, and he was looking amazing. And now Gafford's out too. Man, the Mavs might be in trouble. I mean, they did win today, but I think this team's going to slowly kind of start slipping to the bottom of the standings, and I don't know how much Kyrie Irving can do, Pat. AD's out and Gafford's out. That's your front court.
And
Um,
Lively.
and Lively's out. So yeah, you have no front court. They're starting a white guy. Jeez, I forget his name.
Powell.
What?
Powell? Dwight Powell?
No, he's white. Hold on, I got you.
Okay. Um,
Oh wait. Oh, they're starting Kessler Edler, Carson Kelly, Kyler Kelly. Oh, they're not starting. I don't know why I've heard his name so much during the Mavs broadcasts. But they're starting Kessler Edwards, who's been doing okay for them, but I see this as a problem. I think Max Christie is doing good for them. And I think
mhm.
he's actually going to be like a decent piece for them. But I mean, you gave up Luka, so it doesn't really matter what he does. But yeah, the Mavs are kind of scaring me. I think I wrote down how bad did the Mavs fuck up, Pat? Because I mean, we knew how like
But,
the Mavs' worst nightmare happened. Yeah, AD's injury prone, but he's been playing most games this season. He's been playing his most games in the past 3 years. Whew, man.
I think it was really interesting because that Mavs Rockets game was on the same day as the Spurs Magic game that I was talking about earlier, and that was the first game that day. And Anthony Davis came out with an intensity that I don't think we've seen. He was muted and nobody heard it.
Be muted.
But
I was trying to
uh,
be muted.
but he came out with an intensity that I haven't seen since New Orleans, right? Like not just an aggressiveness tacking. Like we'd see it time to time with the Lakers, but like his first game with Dallas off the injury reserve, he was coming out here like super assertive, and I kind of got me surprised. I was like, Anthony Davis at one point was the guy in the NBA. Like Anthony Davis was the guy that was going first in every fantasy draft from GMs saying that they would want Anthony Davis. Of course, Nico Harrison probably was one of the GMs who said that, but yeah, I mean, he just kind of looked like that guy for 24 minutes of basketball, and then he got hurt. Really rough. I don't think they're probably gonna fall out. I would think. Um,
Yeah, especially with the Spurs, they can get things on track. The way that the Warriors have low key been doing decent with Jimmy Butler as well. They've kind of turned into a new team. Kevon Looney has been playing good basketball. At the five spot, it's crazy, man.
do you know
Uh,
who else has been playing good basketball at the five spot? We talked about him in the preseason. We didn't know what had happened to him because he had originally been cut to be signed to a two-way deal. You're putting up the P.
Postman, the Postman, Quinton
The
Post.
postman Quentin Post has been playing pretty well at starting at the five
Yeah, and it's been awesome because Draymond can play the four now.
with Jimmy or Kaminga if they wanted to play Kaminga. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think Steph talked about it a little bit too. Just his ability to stretch the floor has been awesome for them, and he's been playing amazing this road trip. I heard one of the players say it's because his girlfriend is on the road trip with them, but hopefully the girlfriend comes to every single game because the Warriors could kind of play their way into a new seeding. They're at the 10 spot right now. They got really unlucky the last game. Um, Jimmy Butler's back and playing basketball for real. I think he's been dropped like 20 points the past couple games. So, whew, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to see. It's fun to see Jimmy play basketball again, like for real. Um, I think a lot of NBA fans can say that.
And the big thing too, with his first three games back, he had over like 35 free throw attempts.
Yeah,
And I don't know, has he taken 35 attempts all year? Like prior to that?
he took 35 shots since the trade rumors started happening.
Yeah, like it's kind of crazy. Just a new level of aggressiveness that we knew he had. Um, I guess I'll go over the rest of the player things that you mentioned before. Quentin Grimes is getting paid this offseason. Somebody's getting him. I hope
Great
it's not.
Randy.
I hope it's not that one team. Um, I hope it's not them because yeah, Joel Embiid. We're not talking about his team, but we're talking about him. It is looking more and more likely that he might. It's close to end. I think they're saying that he's going to have another procedure done on his knee at the end of the year.
I I I'm with you, Pat. I'm kind of I'm kind of done with him in general, but I think his career could seriously be over soon because yeah, like you said, he said that the only way it could happen, he can be fixed again, is another not only another surgery, but a lengthy recovery after, like a lengthy recovery. So we're talking about at least next season and maybe even to the next season, and and who knows what he's going to be like after that. Even if he's dominant, uh, how old is Joel?
31, 32.
Yeah, so he'll be like 34, 34 with the worst knees and ankles in the league, probably. Um, so I don't know, man. I mean, I used to be excited to turn on the TV and watch Joel play basketball a little bit. I mean, some of the stuff he did was annoying with like the foul baiting, but still, like 7-1 and that fadeaway being your main one of your best shots is just crazy. And his footwork in the mid range was also impeccable, really. And the way that he can knock down threes, along with Tyrese Maxey. I mean, when I was watching film, the beginning of the season, their little dribble handoff stuff was just so beautiful to watch. And now they paid him so much, and he can't stay on the court, and he's complaining to the. I mean, the thing I hated was he was yelling at his teammates for effort. I was like, dude, you cannot be talking. I mean, yeah, they should be getting back, but like, you're the worst. You're the one of the like least effort guys in the league. Um, but yeah, it's very concerning for Joel Embiid, and it's not. We barely seen him on the court. I mean, when he's on the court, he's doing his thing, but another surgery. another lengthy process. I'm definitely concerned, and yeah, I mean, we probably won't be able to talk about Philly for a couple years coming, if it continues to go like this.
And like, too, like, if I'm in the situation of anybody in power in that team, right? I'm saying, why are we doing this again? Let's get the surgery, shut you down. We're currently the 11 seed. It's going to be a long shot if we get into the playoffs anyway. Let's shut you down, because why it's so bad is last year he tore his meniscus, right?
In
And they
February, right?
sounds right. February sounds right. He
Yeah.
tore his meniscus in February. They give him a procedure that typically gets guys back quicker than the normal full procedure. But that procedure's never been done on a guy who is 310 pounds. And it plays at the level that Joel Embiid plays. Especially a guy with the injury history of Joel Embiid. And this is not a Dallas Mavericks situation where I'm calling out a player for being overweight. Joel Embiid is huge.
Yeah,
Like,
because it's not
and
like I don't think he's really ever had weight like
not
concern
really.
like weight issues. So yeah,
Like,
it's. I mean, we saw it with Yao Ming, right? His knees were deteriorated at the end of his career. He could barely walk, and he was like 31. He was around Embiid's age.
Greg Oden didn't get past 24. Like,
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard for what these guys are doing, especially with their body types, right? But I mean, it's I think it's a little bit of maybe the 76ers low key mishandled this. Um Also, it's got to be some on Joel Embiid, man. I don't know. He's had these problems since like 2015. Um, Not that the problems are his fault, but I mean, 76ers should have done something to keep it better. Because I mean, now it's looking like you're gonna be stuck with this aging star for the next 3 years, 4 years, and you're gonna keep having the same issues with him missing games, not being able to play back to backs, and probably some injury issues down the road with him re-aggravating stuff. I'm sure.
yeah. And look at this. I just had to pull it up because this is Joel Embiid as a 19-year-old in college. Like, he was a skinny dude, right? Coming into the draft, the concern with him is he probably needs to put on weight. He's probably about 220 pounds there as a 7'1" guy. He's put on, he couldn't have put on 100 pounds of muscle, but he probably put on 60, 70 pounds of muscle. He put in work to get to the position where he's at, and he had a lot of injury concerns at the start of his career where he needed to put on muscle to dismiss some of those concerns. It's a guy who's worked really hard, and sure, there's probably 10 pounds of fat there. But this is not a guy who has necessarily put himself in horrible positions. It's just I don't think they should have rushed that procedure a year ago, because I think it's really compromised him health wise long term. I think, I mean, you even watched him playing in the Olympics a year ago. Like, he looked 90% healthy, right? And that's 90% for Joel Embiid, who always seems to be hobbling through things. And he missed the whole start of the year. This year, just not looking good, and it was kind of a phantom injury. Like, we didn't know what it was for. I think we need to just pull the plug on the season. If he has any chance of returning for more than like a year, it's going to be doing it right now and giving him a full summer to recover. Um, because otherwise, it just doesn't look very likely. And this guy's signed till 2028. On the Kings, because you mentioned the Kings, Malik Monk, he's been starting at point guard for them, correct?
Yeah, Keon Ellis has been coming off the bench, and he's had a good. I think he had like 27 last night.
Yeah. So you mentioned Levine keeping them afloat. I'm calling for it, all right? Doug Christie, I know you're an avid listener of the podcast. You have to be. Um, let's let DeMar play point guard. Like, let's do it. I want to see it happen. Let's have DeMar play point guard, start Keon Ellis, and let's just see what happens. Right? Let's see what happens. It'll allocate your talent pretty well. Split up the minutes and let's see it. DeMar DeRozan, your point guard. He can pass the ball. I promise you. I've seen him do it. Um, yeah. I guess what other things do we have necessarily?
I think that's all I wrote down.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, yeah, that's all I wrote down. So
the
that's all I got.
no ladders today. We'll have ladders next time.
Oh, I have a ladder, but
Go through it really quickly. Just read off the names, I guess.
okay, bad. Well, I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but I got Cat at 5, Tatum at 4, Giannis at 3, Shea at 2, and I'm keeping Joker at 1. Just because I when I looked at the standings, I was like, okay, it's hard to give Shea that nod that he is the best team in the West because it's not like the Nuggets are a 5 seed now; they're still top 3. I think that uh I think that Jokic is a more efficient shooter. He's a more efficient shooter. I think he's a better rebounder. I think he's a better playmaker. I do think Shea has him defensively. I think he has him. I mean, he has him in points per game, but by like 3. Um, but yeah, I'm sticking with Jokic, man. I'm sticking with Jokic still. It's hard though, but I'm gonna stick with Jokic. I just think that he's doing it without the guys, the talent that Shea has. But if you say Shea, I wouldn't be mad at all because he's up there. When I remember when I talked about one of the first MVP ladders, I was like, this dude's unstoppable. It's so hard to guard Jokic. Shea's in that. Shea's 100% in that realm. Um, he does it every night. But yeah, that's my MVP ladder.
Hell yeah.
Lot of familiar faces. I think that
Yeah. Same
the
five, I
guys.
think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like from recent pollings, Tatum,
Yeah.
Giannis. So I mean, it's good to see guys with consistency. Great to see.
Yeah.
Great to see. And we're seeing historic stuff right now, Pat. Because like Joker, like Giannis has like a kind of like consensus kind of third overall MVP vote with the type of season he's having is crazy. Like he should be the front runner, right? And then Joker and Shea are just a tier above him, which is insane. He's not even the same tier as those guys, MVP wise. So good stuff. After hearing some criticism about the ratings, I think the NBA has been doing a great job at fixing it, and I think people just needed to adjust, man.
Yeah. And I guess this is the late hours. This is obviously when we're recording this is late hours. An hour into the podcast. We're not a hot takes podcast, right? I've always said that. But I'll let myself get this one out right now because it's 11:15 at night and it's an hour into the podcast. Because it relates to the MVP ballot that we're talking about here. Jokic, we've always talked about. The
You're
past
good.
the past 3 years. Here, hold up. I think we'll probably continue this next week, but I'll just give one final note before we wrap this one up. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the last 3 years has averaged 30 points per game, 31, 30, and now he's averaging 32 and a half. Michael Jordan, his first couple years in Chicago weren't looked at as brightly among fans until he actually won. And I feel like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's years right now, specifically the past couple years, haven't been uh, praised as much because he's yet to win a ring. And I think the 2 seasons that he's had previous to this past year are going to be looked at a lot more favorably once he's won a ring, similar to 1988 and 1987 Michael Jordan. So hopefully that doesn't age horribly, and hopefully I have interpreted the past a lot better because that happened way before I was born. So do you have anything else before we wrap this one up?
Nah, Pat, it's been an interesting 2 weeks and a lot more interesting ones to come. I think.
Yeah. And I hope Shea Gilgeous-Alexander wins a couple rings, because if not, I'm gonna look like an idiot. Um,
Hey, it's happened to me multiple times on this podcast. So don't trip.
yeah. All right. Well, I threw that one out there. Maybe next week we talk about it more. We will see you guys next week.